welcome back, everybody, to episode number 28 of Musical Journeys. Today, my guest is Missy Whitney, all the way from California. Missy has a great new book coming out about Kevin Dubrow of Quiet Riot. Most everybody knows about Quiet Riot and especially mental health. It's a diamond album, I found out. I didn't realize it was a 10 million selling album, but, very rare and a huge album. But Missy goes way back with Kevin Dubrow when he was first starting out, and we're going to kind of walk through some of his career and talk about her new book, who she's collaborating with Mark Weiss, the great rock photographer, The Decade That Rocks. You have the book back there.
I do.
And I have the book right here.
That's right.
Which I love, which is an interesting segue into the story about Kevin Dubrow. One of the things about Kevin Dubrow that I learned was that he was going to be a photographer. He started to be a photographer. And that's kind of an interesting parallel to he could have been Mark Weiss, because apparently he was really great at it. I saw some photos he did, and seemed really talented at that particular thing. And then I read this, and I'm not sure, you can clear this up for me, that he saw Rod Stewart. And that was what made him want to be on stage?
It's funny you should say that, because I recently did that as a question to a show where they wanted me to ask them 5 questions on Quiet Riot, and I threw that one in there.
Yeah.
And the 3 choices I gave them were Rod Stewart, Humble Pie, and Rolling Stones, and they got it wrong.
Oh.
They chose Humble Pie, which is one of Kevin's favorite bands,
Sure.
if not the favorite, but it was Rod Stewart. And I always say, if you go watch any footage of Rod Stewart, Kevin moves a lot like him on the stage.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I see that part of it, and it's an interesting parallel between Mark and then him switching over and becoming a singer. And I read a little bit about his initial coming into the Quiet Riot version 1, or I guess you'd call it, with Randy, and how that happened. And Randy had kind of started it, I guess. It was Randy and Kelly, or
The original Quiet Riot, I call it, I break it into 3 groups. One would be Quiet Riot, the Randy Rhoads years, Dubrow,
right,
which is where I came in, and then Quiet Riot Mental Health years, which is Dubrow continued. But before I go into that, because you brought up photography, I have to bring this up,
sure,
because it's newer information. Kevin's mom, first of all, is going to write the afterword,
awesome,
which I'm very happy about. I haven't seen her since its funeral. So when I spoke to her on the phone, I said, I know your name is Laura, but can I call you Kevin's mom? And she laughed. She goes, of course you can. So I have her in my phone as Kevin's mom with a heart, But she's also given me permission to select a handful of Kevin's photos that he took of bands.
Awesome.
And Ron Sobol, I asked Ron to pick the best ones, and we're going to have a bonus chapter added, just basically some photos that Kevin took as a teenager. So that is relatively new information.
Well, that's great information. Yeah. Can't wait to see those. You know some of the artists that they're pictures of?
I think Ron said he mentioned Uriah Heep, Rod Stewart, and Humble Pie. That's my understanding.
Okay.
So I don't know how many we're going to get, and I don't how that's going to work out. But even if we had 2 or 3, it's worth putting it in there, because here's Kevin as a teenager before he got into the music industry. So I thought that'd be a nice bonus chapter, and I'm really grateful that Kevin's mom approved us to use the photos in the book, since this is all about Kevin and Quiet Riot too. It's not just Kevin, but it's a combination of both. But to answer your earlier question, honestly, I see things here and there. Ron Sobol's book about Randy Rhoads probably has a better in-depth history. I was a tad younger than some of the people that started following the Randy years. I'm about 6, 7, 8 years younger than the group. So I came in when I was 16 in 79. So I know more about the history when the tail end of Randy, and then he went to Ozzy. And I started on the ground floor with Kevin when he decided to go solo as Dubrow before it turned into mental health.
Right.
This is a book about my experiences. So once I wrote the book, I had some of my photos, and I had Kevin's handwritten letters, because we were pen pals first. But then I was able to look at photos from Mark's collection and Ron's collection and be able to say, oh, these are perfect to go with this particular story I happen to tell. So, for instance, when they did the mental health video shoot, which was their first video,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any photos from that. I did have, my story about getting the fans down and everything. And then it turns out Ron had some photos at the video shoot. So I got to include them in the book. I don't know if he used them anywhere else. So I definitely will have that to accompany the chapter.
Yeah, I mean it's like finding those photos like you see in this book with the Decade That Rock, those rare photos that you've never seen. That's the gold, right? It's the
It really is. And I have to say, Mark's book is like the Bible for all of us, the Bible of that era.
Sure. And it's working. Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, the gold is in these great photos like the one you have on the cover. Talk about that photo. I know you talked about it before, but it's a really cool shoot.
It really is. That's how I met Mark back in June of this year. I didn't know Mark. I didn't know until after I met him that I had some 8x10s that Kevin gave me that he signed to me that photographed with Mark Weiss. So that was kind of neat to know who that Mark Weiss person was when I've had a photo of him in my collection for 40 years. So that was a neat thing to find out. But I was looking for a particular photo where you could see Kevin's necklaces very clearly, because the one necklace closest to his neck is a 3D charm of his microphone stand. In fact, if you look at it really closely, you can see in almost like indentation where it would be striped. And then the little mic head is a little diamond.
Wow.
And I think it cost me, God, I don't remember now, 100 or something. I have the receipt in the book because I kept the receipt.
Awesome.
And I never took any photos of it. What was I thinking? And so I always said, man, why don't I take some photos of this thing? And to be honest with you, I almost snagged it for myself because it was so darn cute.
Right.
It just stood up by itself like a little microphone. So I gave it to Kevin for his 28th birthday, which was right around the time they filmed the TV show Solid Gold.
Right.
And after that, he wore it a ton. I know at some point you no longer see him wearing it years later, but I think I saw that the necklace broke and he lost it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of visual of it everywhere in videos and in photos. So you know what? It served its purpose. But so I'm digging around, I'm looking, and I came across the photo of Kevin with the leopard skin and the leather pants and bound and gagged. And I remember that from being a cover of a magazine. In fact, I know I've got it, So I thought, okay, well, that one there, I can see it really well. It never occurred to me to look at other photos in Mark's collection. But I reached out to him and I just asked about it. And then he kept asking me questions about the project. And finally, I just picked up the phone. And then he really wanted to do something. He says, give me about a month. I'm launching my book, but I want to think about this. And I'm like, okay. And he didn't say yes or no, but I didn't really know where he was going with this. I never would have dreamed he wanted to collaborate. So he said, okay, so which picture were you interested in? I said, well, anything from this photo collection. I sent him a snippet. Mm-hmm. And when he sent back a bunch of photos from that collection that weren't used, Kevin with the hands in prayer, I thought, that's perfect because he's praying, he's in heaven, he's an angel, right? And then Mark said, oh, I'm glad you selected that one because that would have been my first choice too. And I love how it's kind of floating on the cover. It's just really cool.
Right, so, it is a great cover, and I love the leopard print. And just knowing his personality, it's just perfect for him. I mean, I just grew up watching him on TV. It's funny when you knew him personally, but I've met people who I idolize, like Kevin Dubrow, and when you meet them, sometimes they're exactly what you see. I mean, they're literally that person. And I've met Rudy before, Rudy Sarzo, and he's one of those people. He's very genuine, and what you see is what you get with him. And I just get that same feeling about Kevin.
Yeah. The thing is with this cover. It's almost like he's got this look on his face like, if you believe I'm an angel, I got some property.
Right.
I got some front in the desert. And not in a bad way. We know Kevin has his reputation, and we know a lot of people have talked about it and how a lot of people have put it behind them. And they're like, you know what? We've all grown up and grown past it. And of course, it was a big deal back then. But, people were not happy with it. I'm sure the people that he badmouth weren't happy with it, but it always tickled me.
Well,
because that was who Kevin was before he was famous. So it's like, well, at least he's authentic. I mean, I tell people my opinions. I'm not the most popular, but I'm not on the world stage, so no one cares.
Right. And I remember something. I mean, being there at the time, I remember some of that. But all those years have passed now, and what's left is the music, and his work, and that's what you remember is his voice. And it's one of those voices that's so unique. It's like it's like a Steve Perry or somebody that you immediately can, when you hear it, you know it, and that's what made him special. One of the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sean, I know Frankie had a hard time finding a similar voice when in his documentary.
Yeah, and I've seen that.
And I watched it a few times because I forget really how hard it is to be able to hit that rock or scream without it being a death growl. It's not that, but it's melodic, and it could hit super high notes. It's like, wow, he really developed a voice.
He did.
And when he was gone, it was irreplaceable.
Yeah, it's true. So let's go back a little bit in your history. First of all, what kind of music were you brought up on? Your family, and how did you gravitate to the which club was it? Did you saw them at first?
Star Baby. It was actually a discotheque that had a rock and roll night.
Okay. And you when you were younger, what were you listening to, and how did you end up? What age were you at this thing?
First of all, that's a nice question. It's very different from what I've been asked before. So thank you for asking.
Sure.
I was 16 when I went to their first show. But prior to that, the music I was listening to, first of all, I grew up in a house. My father was a big band drummer. And he played in a big band called Sultans of Swing and Rob Richards Band in Milwaukee. And so I grew up on big band music, believe it or not. So no voices, a lot of, Artie Shaw, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman. So I grew up in a house with that, and some pop radio. But what happened was when I got around 7th grade, you listen to the radio and some song will come on. And there was a song that kept coming on. And the DJ never said who it was, and I was getting really frustrated. So I finally found a way to record it so I could ask my older sister when she'd come home and say, who is this band? I love this band. It turns out that it was Aerosmith's song, Last Child.
Okay.
And I felt like that was a drug, and that was my gateway into rock stuff. So I had to have everything Aerosmith. Now, turns out my very, very, very favorite band of all time ended up being Queen.
Yeah.
And I saw them many times. I saved my babysitting money. I made payments on tickets. When they were at the Forum once, they played 4 nights in a row, and my girlfriend and I saw all 4 nights, and we had tickets from first row, second row, 5th, and 10th.
Wow.
With Freddie Mercury. So, I was a very, very devoted, and that's what I do. If I love this band and they're playing, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, I'm going to get the money. I'm going to buy the tickets. I'm going to make the payments. I'm going to make sure I go. Right. It's never last minute. I think I'll pop over to a concert. So I took that same dedication when it came to running the fan club. I did it on my own without being asked originally before Kevin was signed. And I made my own little list called Dubrow Rocks, a mailing list. And I started gathering people, started obviously with my family, my friends. And my sister, Michelle, was my shadow, my younger sister. She went and did everything with me.
Okay.
And then I started trying to get people at the clubs that would go see the show and get them on my mailing list so I could let them know when he was playing again. So I kind of started it that way until and then got to know Kevin that way and then went from there. So Queen, Aerosmith, Kevin actually introduced me to Billy Squier.
Okay.
He called me one day and said, you got to hear the song called The Stroke. It's greatest. I love Billy. That's the only artist he's ever recommended to me. And so Billy Squier is one of my favorites to this day because, Kevin recommended him to me.
Well, I could see that. Billy Squier had a very unique voice too, and a very, very I don't want to say it was Zeppelin-like or whatever, but there was a vibe about that very direct, powerful music that he made back then. Yeah, and so you end up at this first show, and what is it about Quiet Riot and Kevin Dubrow and Randy Rhoads that ignites this passion in you that you have to go do this?
Well, I think, to be fair, part of it was the first live show I ever saw. And when you're 16 and that's a live show and you're standing right there in front of them, 2 feet in front,
right,
and it makes an impression on you. So I can't rule that out as being, maybe if I saw a live band, I may have fell in love with anybody. Who knows? However, Randy's guitar, I couldn't get over the fact that there was this petite blonde man in the corner with this polka dotted vest, bow tie, which I thought was so strange back then,
Right.
And the sound was so great. He would strum his guitar and the room just filled. And it was just like I was in awe.
Right.
And afterward, I had my mother, I gave her some photos. I have to dress like him. I just love Randy. I have to dress like him. So my mother, who took the photos and the back was black and the front was polka dot, she made it by visual. And I wore that to a couple of the Quiet Riot shows. Emulation is the highest form of flattery. So that's what I did. Now, I did kind of come in late, so when they were, around for like 3 or 4 years, and I came in 79. But I started taking photos of the band, and I looked up Kevin's address, and I mailed it to him, the duplicates. And, when you have those little cameras, they don't really produce really good photos. So you get 10 out of 50 because you develop a blur because that one's running around. But the handful I would get were really good because I was right up front. And so I wrote Kevin and sent him pictures, and he wrote back and thanked me for the photos. And then one day he must have looked me up in the phone book, and he gave me a call. And I didn't know who it was at first. And so he sang Slick Black Cadillac to let me know that it was Kevin Dubrow, which of course I was just like in awe. Right. And then he had to tell me that Randy was leaving the band to go with Ozzy Osbourne.
Wow.
And I just had found them, just for a few months before this happened. And I was just like, oh, there goes this band that I was going to devote all my energy to. Sure. And but he said, I'm going to start my own band, and I'm just going to call it Dubrow, and so I can make all the decisions and call the shots. Yep. Because when you're a group name, everyone's got to have an opinion, and we all know Kevin's opinion is his favorite opinion. so now he can call the shots. And he said Drew would be the drummer, and then that started the whole Dubrow thing. So I felt sad that Quiet Riot broke up, and I loved the name, but I was willing to kind of say, all right, you know what, you're a great singer. There's a lot of fun on stage. But I had no idea that it would develop into a friendship and to a fan club thing. And we ended up being, good friends. So that was a really a path I didn't know I was going to take.
Right. You connected with him, and he connected with you. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. I see the news of the world behind you over there. Your queen.
Oh, yeah. Actually, it's funny. You're the only one who noticed that. That News of the World, it's a mirror, as you can tell.
Oh, yeah, from like the set.
But here's the cool thing about that. When I would go to see Queen, back when I was a teenager, one of my best friend Lorian's, her boyfriend at the time, he had another friend named Stoner, which I think is hilarious to this day. That's his nickname. We were in the parking lot of the Forum, and he made mirrors. He made them at home. This Stoner guy. He brought them there, and he sold them for like $10. So that mirror is not something you can buy anywhere. It was from Stoner that I bought from him for $10 in the parking lot when I was a teenager at a Queen concert.
Wow, that's cool. I love unique art, and when people do that stuff, it's crazy. And your mask, I see your mental health mask.
Well, the mask is the one you can actually buy that one, and it looks just like the one on the album. I'm not sure if you saw in other interviews, but
I did.
The masks that they use for the audience mental health were actually made by the college, and I actually have it right here. Okay. This is the mask that was used.
Wow. Awesome. That's cool.
And everybody at the end of the video shoot was supposed to turn these back into the college, and I did because I'm, Susie Cream Cheese. But my sister did it. I was able to borrow her. I believe this is the only one that's left from the video shoot. The only one.
Wow. That's cool. I guess some other oddity questions that I didn't hear in other things. So maybe you don't know or you do know. You were talking about Randy Rhoads and the bow tie. I recently saw the David Bowie movie. It's called Stardust, and I don't know if you've seen that, but in it, Mick Ronson is portrayed, and of course he and Randy had a similar look. And I think Randy was initially inspired by Alice Cooper, but maybe David Bowie a little bit too.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was always wondering if there's that connection with Ronson or the look with the bow tie was
well, now I'm going to have to see see that. I'm gonna have to watch that.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
It is interesting because Ronson in the movie, as they're becoming the spiders, it kind of, I don't know whether it's true because I couldn't find this, but he didn't like the dressing up part, I guess. And of course, Bowie was.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Bowie was, that was a whole transformation for Bowie. It's a very interesting movie about Bowie's early first couple of years, and it's a great movie. It's called Stardust. Also,
well, I heard that.
Go ahead.
I heard that Ozzy or somebody in Ozzy's camp didn't like the polka dots on Randy, so he had to get rid of that when it was Ozzy. That's what I heard. I don't know for sure if that's true, but I hope that's why he stopped polka dots once he went with Ozzy.
Yeah, and he had that guitar, the V, it was polka dots. He continued to play that, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure they wanted him to look more uniform to what they were doing at that right. Tour. There was one show. Now, this is something that if you say Queen's your band, then Van Halen's my band, which happened to be Quiet Riot's kind of rival, and you were there. So I have to ask, did you see that rivalry? One, and two, did you ever see a show where they were together? Because there's apparently a few, or maybe just one or two.
I don't think so, because I got involved in '79, and I believe that was all prior to that. So I was a little too young.
Right, that would
for
have been right before Van Halen. Yeah. This was before Van Halen, or right around Van Halen signing.
Yeah, the bands that were kind of like the ones that were in play back when I was involved was like Motley Crue. They came out later still, because I actually saw the very first Motley Crue show.
Oh wow!
They played at a place called Pookie's in Orange County.
Wow!
So I saw them, and I had actually bought their little album, the little disc with their original little song. So I did see them back then, but as time went on, Kevin demands loyalty.
Sure, right. And I read this about the rivalry because Chris Holmes, who you probably know from Wasp. He has commented recently how intense that rivalry was between, he thought anyway, and that was his view, that it was a very intense rivalry, and you didn't cross camps if you were one or the other. That's why I asked you. Yeah.
Now, but with that being said, Kevin never said, "Hey, you can't go see a band. That's ridiculous." But what it was is that, first of all, when you do like one band back then, you really are loyal to them, and you know that when they're playing, you're fighting for fans, you're fighting for airtime. Now you can like everybody and no one cares. Mm-hmm. But back then, there was this sort of street gang. You're on this side, you're on this side.
It's your team.
And I've always loved Quiet Riot, Dubrow, and to this day, when I look at footage, especially the old stuff where they had the opening with Quiet Riot and all the smoke and the sirens, I still get chills as if I were 16, because they just put on this great show. And Motley Crue, they went on to have their own success, but personally I was never really a fan. I liked the early when they first started out, but I don't know, some of the stuff they sing about just did not impress me. I think if you're a teenage boy, you're gonna love girls. Sure. Don't really give a crap.
Right. You didn't connect with that. Sure, and I get that. And maybe what was it, there was an interview, one of them anyway, where they had talked about Roy Thomas Baker, bringing him in. So what? And that's Queen's producer. So I'm gather that Kevin had some love for Queen, or maybe they were maybe not patterning themselves, but maybe using some of the ideas. I don't know. You were there.
I would not know that. In fact, I didn't even know that little tidbit right there. I didn't recall that, but I can't imagine that Kevin would not know quality, because he does know a lot of quality bands. I think for Kevin, he probably, this is just me speculating, he probably viewed bands that were already signed, already big, that influenced him, that impressed him, mm-hmm. that inspired him as more than the ones that were coming out of the same scene that he came in. Because, you're looking at them as people that are, trying to get a record deal like him. He's not going to see them as people who are above him.
Sure.
And so, Roy Thomas Baker is huge, and I, used to read the liner notes of every Queen album about 1,000 times. So, of course, and I'm sure he probably knows as well. We've never had a discussion about them. I know he was a Steve Marriott fan, mm-hmm. huge Steve Marriott fan. It wasn't until years later when I started listening to a lot of that, to kind of go, wow, yeah, this guy's he's got it going on. Another shooting star that soon.
I don't know if it was Ron Sobol or it was one of his close friends in his circle. that had mentioned that he told him that he wanted Roy Thomas Baker to produce their album.
Oh,
That's what hit me. I was like, you were talking about Queen, so I just remember about that interview.
I love that. I love hearing new things about Kevin that I don't even know.
Well, yeah, you dig through some of this stuff. It's amazing what you can find. And I watched Kevin. I watched a lot of Kevin's interviews and found stuff that it was just amazing to find. Going back through it. One of the things about him and about David Lee Roth, I know that they're very both of them were very driven guys. And they had a very similar persistence. They both kind of fought their way into the attention of these bands that they ended up in and then went huge with. And they were the perfect guys for these bands. That's how I see these guys. They were like the perfect front man. And I was making the comment of how they both ended up at the US Festival together. Quiet Riot kind of breaking, Van Halen kind of at the top of their game. At same point, and he was one of the few frontmen. And when you look at that heavy metal day, you think about all the frontmen that were there. These guys were and still are legends in the business. Yes. And Dubrow, he was right there with them. That was an amazing performance. Were you at that, or were you around then?
You know what? I had this question asked before on the US Festival, and I don't answer it because I have an actual chapter dedicated to my experience on that, because I went there, but I didn't get in, and it's a whole story, and it was such a great story. I'm just going to leave it for someone who gets the book.
Sure, good for that. Good for that. And we need to talk about the book too, but let me go through a couple more things here that I've got for you. Just kind of mention, and I mentioned this earlier, but Mental Health was the #1 album. Come On Feel the Noise was number 5 on the charts. When it came to #1, from what I've gathered, at least from Wikipedia, it knocked off Synchronicity by the Police off of #1. There was a talk about something about the whole, I don't know if Ron Sobol said this, but about David Lee Roth poking at him with the iced tea comment.
Oh yeah, that was on an interview. I was actually on that interview when he brought that up.
Yeah. Right. But what I saw, and I know about the US Festival myself, is that he didn't direct it at Quiet Riot at that point. He directed it at the Clash, because he says this is not the Clash, baby, or something like that. I'm almost like a Van Halen historian. I'm good friends with the guy who wrote the Van Halen Rising book, Greg Renoff, so I have a lot of that information. But yeah, that was he probably did do that later. But it's interesting that came up.
I know it. Kevin adored David Lee Roth.
Did he?
So I mean, he thought he was the greatest. So maybe because he was looking in a mirror.
Well, yeah, to me they have, when I went back through Greg's book, and you were there with Kevin. These guys had a persistence and a business mind, and you did, and you did too. Because as I watched you and you talk about your story and the way you handle this business, which is a business, this fan club side of this, it's a business that you had to run, you had to organize, and you had to do all these things. So you had to have, that mindset of building your way through this, making this thing, elevate, just like Kevin would have had to do in his career. You were mirroring him in your side.
Yeah, that's what I always say, that the reason why I think Kevin and I got along so well, even though everyone says can be a prickly personality, is that we were very businesslike. And there's time for passion, there's time for the whole bit. When I would go to any of the shows, I'm the same way now, because the bands I love now are like King's X, and I'm a big prog fan. I love Steven Wilson and Porcupine Tree. I mean, to death. I will go to, when they're playing anywhere a radius of 50 miles, I'll go to Steven Wilson. I'll see all the shows, and if I can get in front, all the better. Right. But you pick up your camera if you want to take photos. Nowadays, I don't bother because of all the rules. But you take your little photos, you put it down, and the rest of the time, I'm playing air drums and I'm pointing out guitar things and I'm singing and my eyes are closed. I only look occasionally to get some lights and I'm back into that zone. But then there's a time for business. That's the time for play. That's the time for immersing your body in the music and enjoying what it is you're working for. So when you leave that state of mind, you're trying to go out there and connect with other fans and tell them when the band's playing next. And, if they want to be part of spreading the word. and the motivation just pours out of you. So
Right.
there's two different. And so when Kevin's on stage, she's giving it his all, just like any other band member. And outside of that, they take that energy and momentum and they say, okay, how do we get to our next level? Now, I think what you're saying about, having to do certain duties, I never thought of it that way, because I just kind of went with whatever I felt was correct. I think I'll do a newsletter. I think I will mail it to people that don't know what's going on. I think I'll add, tour schedule. I think I'll add information on the band. It really was more of a organic process, but I was never taught how to do it. It was never, this is how you run a fan club. Mm-hmm. And it would have probably gone further as if it didn't collapse, which is all about in the book as well, mm-hmm. how it didn't go past a certain point. And then social media took over, so there's really no point for fan club presidents anymore. But it was never something where I sat down and said, okay, I had to be told what to do. It's just, you just knew what to do instinctively. Yeah. That's the best person to hire as a fan club president than some corporate person who just says, all right, what's my job? What do I have to do? You just can't do it. And to go further, I was asked by, I don't remember his name, but he was a keyboardist who wasn't included as a band member, I think for Warrant. I'm not sure. It's been a long time.
Okay.
He knew of my work with Kevin and everything, and he contacted me, and he really wanted to have his own fan club for him as a keyboardist because he really wasn't being considered a band member. And I'm like, and okay. And I could not, for the life of me, create any kind of promotional newsletter without it sounding forced, because I did not care. Mm-hmm. I have to love what I'm doing in order for it to be successful. Sure. If it's something that are put upon me, here, we want you to promote this band that I could not give a rat's ass about.
Right.
It's not going to happen, and I can't come up with the words.
Right.
So
right.
That's part of it.
That is the passion is the same thing with music when you're in a band like this. You cannot do this if you don't love it. It's just impossible.
It's
you know what I mean? People will be like, how do you do all this stuff? And it's because when I wake up every day, that's what I want to do. And yes. I do it for a living now. I was in the corporate world for a number of years and I left it. And I came to what I love again, which I've been playing since I was a kid. But when I came to this and then I focused all my energy on it, everything started to really work for me. I started to find that connection between what I love and what would be a business. But it's like a lot of people say, it's not work when you love it like that. Or, you never work a day in your life if you do what you love. It's
Mark told me, he's like, you do realize when we do this book, now that we're doing it on a bigger scale, which I wasn't going to do originally, I was just going to do a Kindle and sell it to a handful of friends. It's just, you're going to have to do interviews. And I'm like, oh no. I'm the behind the scenes gal. Whoa, no. I mean, don't get me wrong. My friends, they know that I'm like the little leader of the group, and I drag them everywhere, and I tell jokes and this and this and that. But when it comes to like bands and artists, I prefer behind the scenes. Sure. And I said, well, all right, fine. I go fine. Once I started doing the interviews, I realized I'm talking about what I love, and it's from 40 years ago, and I'm reliving everything, and it was just like, oh, this is a piece of cake.
So it's easy, right? Right. See, because the same thing happened to me when I started doing this. There was sort of an accident that had happened to me. I got into this through just sitting in the studio with a couple of really famous guys that were the Swampers. If you're familiar with the Swampers, who were the backing band for a lot of the 50 or the 60s artists and 70s artists, not far from me in Muscle Shoals, actually. And I happened to be in a studio with them, and then I just realized, hey, I kind of like doing, I wanted to know about their career.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to know. And then I thought, maybe I should do this as an interview for start with my local guys that I'm all friends with, and we sat down, and I didn't know anything. I know these guys locally, mm-hmm. and we play in the same scene, but it would be like Randy Rhoads sitting down with Eddie Van Halen and going, hey, what, and tell me how you started and all of that. That never happened. So for me, that's kind of cool to be able to find out even about people I already know or people that I've known for my entire life that I never really dug into their life.
And you find it very interesting. Well, I think it's really cool that you kind of looked at other stuff and saw like what wasn't covered and stuff like that. I would like to share something with you that
go ahead.
Hanging back here that nobody ever notices.
Okay.
After Riot got the deal, and after they And after the album and everything, I was so honored that Kevin asked me to run their fan club. Do you remember how satin jackets were like all the rage?
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, I got one for Kevin too. It says Quiet Riot, and he models it for me in the book. But I got myself one. So this is
awesome.
And then I got the little mask.
Awesome.
Missy. And then the back original logo.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That is awesome.
And so that was before I knew what their logo would look like. I just used the old one. But yeah, this jacket I've had since I was 19 years old, 20 years old. I can't fit it now. It's it's made for a girl.
Yeah, those I had a couple. Yeah, they were the rage, right? They were cool. Yeah. And everybody had those, and then you went through the parachute pants phase, I'm sure.
I did not, because they did not flatter your figure. So, I would not do that. I had to make sure I wore things that were cool,
So
I saw them on the boys.
I got a couple of things here that happened probably after you were involved, but I think they're worth mentioning about Kevin. He was involved in Hearing Aid, which was the big sort of the We Are the World hard rock version. And looking back at those videos and watching him sing, those were the great singers of our time, Dio, Jeff Tate, some of these great singers. And he killed his part. He was just fantastic in it.
Yeah. I recently remembered that, and I said, I got to go look at that again, because I remember thinking he just nailed it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And then, I told you in '84, I think we were talking about some of the things that he said that were controversial, and somewhere in there I read that he compared Quiet Riot to the Beatles' impact, and that was some big flap.
Oh God, yeah.
But you know what? I mean, honestly, when you think about what happened with hard rock at that period, and how mainstream "Come On Feel the Noise" and that whole album made that music accessible, it was like, yeah, Van Halen had their, they could sort of created this thing that every women and men could like. And Quiet Riot, they did something that was different too. They did a huge. Whenever you sell 10 million records, you did something right.
That's exactly
right. And they hit something that between the MTV years. And one of the things one of my friends brought up to me to talk about, and it's interesting about Quiet Riot, is that I don't know that where Carlos's background was, or did you know Carlos very well?
Yeah, Carlos, I knew him first when he played with a band called Snow.
Okay.
And so when we would see Dubrow played, if Snow was on the bill, we would see Carlos play.
Right.
And that actually, the song Mental Health was written by Carlos in the band Snow, called No More Booze.
Okay.
And then Kevin took it and changed it to Mental Health and Bang Your Head. So that's a big thing, with so it was a collaboration afterwards. Kevin said, that's a great song, but we're not going to do No More Booze, What a Drag. That's what the lyrics were.
Oh, really? Okay.
Instead of, yeah. So, and I believe there is a disc out there with that original No More Booze song. It's probably really hard to find. Right. But he wrote that song, and he did come in later at the tail end. He's a very shy guy, very sweet man. Mm-hmm. I don't think he likes playing the politics of bands getting along. Kevin would have this guy in and this guy out, and he would fine tune who you wanted in the band. And I'm sure part of that fine tuning is, who do I get along with? I'm sure that's part of it.
Well, sure.
Carlos seems to be the kind of person who's so laid back. It's almost like he could have been a surfer. He's just so chill. And when we did the video shoot for, which one was it? You said, "Come On, Feel the Noise." Mm-hmm. That one there. It was on his birthday, or near his birthday, in the summertime. Mm-hmm. So me and my friends, we had a guitar pick made, a little silver guitar pick, and it had engraved on there, "Carlos Guitarlos." And Although I didn't see him wear it a lot, he put it on, and you can, and there's certain parts you see a silver thing flashing in that video shoot, and that's the guitar pick, because we gave it to him during a break when we were doing that video shoot, and he put it on his necklace and wore it for the video shoot.
Yeah.
So, and he invited us to a birthday party one time he had in the Hollywood Hills area. And again, he just always seemed like the kind of guy that, he doesn't want to talk bad about people because it's just not his nature.
Right.
He's just more of a laid back, chill guy, and that's just how he is. He's not a Frankie Banelli and a Kevin Dubrow or a David Lee Roth with that passion and drive and that very sharp personality. He's more of that.
Easy
hey,
going.
What's going on?
Yeah, I met him briefly at NAMM, and he was very, like you said, chill. And and he was actually it was a funny thing because it was one of the booths and they were doing 3 people at once. It was Warren DeMartini, Carlos, and Billy Sheehan, all 3 at the same time. I think it was one of the string companies.
Wow.
So I met him all at once. And it's kind of cool. But he was, I had seen him at NAMM before, and my buddy was talking about the diversity in their backgrounds. What different nationalities they came from, and how that was unique to Quiet Riot too. That's such an interesting combination. Rudy came from, I think he lived in Miami before.
I think Rudy, isn't he? He's Cuban.
Cuban, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know Frankie's New York.
What a combination of guys, though. I mean, Carlos is California, right? Probably.
Right. And Kevin is too.
Right. So they're all. Yeah. So you got these 2 guys, all guys from 4 corners. Well, 2 of them from one.
They're smart. Rudy and Frankie knew, LA scene is, that's the place to go. So it's a good thing that they all came out there. Otherwise, it never, obviously would never have met, because when you're in California, everyone gravitates. So it's a good thing that talent came to the town.
Sure. Yeah. Frankie, unfortunately, he passed recently, and he was, like you said, he very passionate. And as I was researching this information, I came across an interview where he talks about how many hours you put into this and as a musician, and how much work you do to make it, and how many hours that he put in through the years in cover bands and playing gigs, and how much that part gets lost a little bit on the new generation, that we that 10,000 hours rule, and he was just sort of alluding to that. And those guys worked really hard, and you were there, like you said. Just Dubrow's shows only in that one period was 107. You said
107, and a lot of them were 2 shows a night. So you would come in, you'd pay your fee, you watch the bands that were lined up. They would usher everybody out, and they would make the next group come in. And I don't think I put this in the book, but we couldn't afford to keep doing that because we're teenagers and we only have so much babysitting money we can use. Yeah. So we would go hide in the bathroom and then mingle on out with the next.
Next group.
We had to, because we weren't these, I'm going to go to a show once in a blue moon. We're like, we're going to go every single time, so we got to make this cost effective. Right.
Well, one of the things that maybe you can enlighten me on is that in the LA scene, the way that they did shows now, I've been to the Whiskey and watched the young bands in the last 15 years, and how they basically do a short set. Another band comes on, does a short set. Is that how it was then, or because
depends on the venue. So, for instance, there were a few venues where they would have 2 shows a night, the same lineup, maybe 2 or 3 acts. They'd play one set, kick everyone out, and have a second set, and then the 2 drink minimum and all that sort of thing. Then there were some venues where they would have 4 or 5 bands, and they all just played once, and that's it. So you got your bands, and your headlining was the very last band.
Right.
So it always just depended. And Kevin would always kind of give me an idea, like when they were going to go on. His reasoning was, you don't have to waste your time and go earlier. But what he didn't understand is that pretty much every single show we would get down there. And I say we, I said, as a revolving group of people. It's always my sister, Michelle, and my girlfriend, Laura, and Michelle Matz, and all these different people. We'd go down and get down to be at the front and wait in line. Even though
you were saying you went down at what?
We'd come out we would go down 2 hours before the doors would open, broad daylight, bring snacks.
Oh, wow.
And we would sit in the front, chit chat, get all excited, and we would go in and we'd get to the very front. Now, people would come in and, buy drinks and this and that. most of the time, of course, we were underage, and even then, to this day, I still don't drink. I just don't drink. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I have my own natural highs, so I don't really bother with it.
Right.
So we'd go to the front and get prepared. And got to the front, and we'd stand for hours.
Yeah.
Most of the bands that played before Dubrow, I wasn't interested in. I mean, I just watch and whatever. They may have been good. They may have been garbage, but I just I kind of single focus. There were two bands actually that I saw that played with Dubrow a number of times that got my attention.
Okay.
And one of them was a band called Smile.
Yeah.
And they did end up getting a record deal with I want to say MCA Records, but they had no idea how to promote them. And that one album didn't go anywhere. I still have the album. I became friends with the lead singer in the 2000s, but the guitar player of that band ended up moving on and was the longtime guitar player for Eddie Money.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I know that is.
Yeah, Tommy. I can't remember his last name.
Okay.
Top of my head.
Yeah.
And then the band was a la carte.
Yeah.
They were a three-piece band that were pretty damn amazing. And I met the drummer again when MySpace was coming out, and I said, God, I used to love a la carte. And they never hit the big time, but they did do a reunion and got back together, the three of them. It was a three-piece band, much more of a rock band than they were a metal, like a hair metal band. That wasn't their thing. And when they got back together again, I was talking with the drummer, Brian, and he was very businesslike too. And I ended up helping them with their CD sales and fulfilling the orders from home, and going to them as part of them. And they ended up doing a CD like 2010 or so, and they thanked me on the back, and I was part of them. But they were an original band that I saw back then. Those are the only two bands that really got my attention. Really?
So you also, I gathered from the other interviews that you got a credit on the back of Mental Health, or 2 credits on the back of Mental Health. So that's awesome, right?
Only 2 credits first pressing, because now that the fan club is no longer, they can't put the PO box that's no longer there. But yeah, no, I was happy about it, but honestly, I think Kevin was a lot more happy about it than I was, because he hadn't told me 10 times on the phone that I was on there twice, and that I should be proud, and of course I was. I mean, but I think for him, maybe he was getting a bunch of people saying, hey, thank me, and so maybe he felt like the fact that they pared it down to a tiny amount of people was a huge thing, and that he wanted me to realize what an honor it was. And it was a huge honor. To this day, it's still a huge honor, because that's a huge album, and I'm on there. So how great is that?
Sold 10 million copies all over the world, and your name's on it. I mean, it's like you said about Roy Thomas Baker. His name's on the liner notes on the albums too. So that's pretty cool, right? Let's talk about your Indiegogo, part of this supporting your new book. It's a pre-order with different packages that you have that you can support with. Tell me about that a little bit. And Mark's part of that.
Well, we did. Yes, we did. I had told Mark when we first decided to work together as partners, I said, I either want the book to come out on Kevin's 65th birthday, October 29th, 2020, or we at least kind of start the release of it. And originally we were probably going to go with a conventional publisher. Mark had a conventional publisher for his book.
Right.
But it turns out that, first of all, if you go with a conventional publisher, you're in a pipeline, which means the book may not come out for years from now. And they also have a lot of pull, like, we don't want that photo in there, et cetera. That's according to Mark.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they don't really do any publicity. You're still doing the bulk of it, and so it's like, and they take a huge piece of it. So I'm thinking, so what is the point of this? There's really no point.
Right.
So Mark says, I'd rather do a campaign and raise the funds ourselves, and then when we fulfill the pre-orders with the little packages, then we'll have some books after, and we'll do the books after. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. We did the first thing. We launched it on Kevin's birthday, and in probably about 2 months, we raised, I think, 53% of our goal. I did all the budgeting and figured out everything, to design the merchandise and the whole bit, and that was a lot of fun, just like the old days.
Right.
And so the campaigns only go like 60 days at a time, and then after that, you can make another campaign if you want. And Mark and I decided to continue, especially because he was so busy with his book. He didn't get a chance to kind of help me with his, contacts to kind of do interviews to get the word out.
Sure.
So we extended it, and now we're on phase 2. We only have to raise another $5,000. I think the last time I checked, we raised like $500 so far.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever did not sell as far as perk packages are still available. And there's still plenty of things on there. And I kind of keep in touch with them. I always send updates what's going on or all the interviews to anybody who purchased. So I stay in touch with them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're either going to run this project at the end of this month. I don't know if we're going to extend it, but Indigo is different than Kickstarter, and that we take the funds that we received and we put it, either we pay for the whole thing or toward it. So the bottom line is that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Mm-hmm. And so the sooner we hit our goals, the faster we can go to press. The book is done. It's been edited. That was months ago. Mm-hmm. And the photos have been selected. I had the fun chore of looking through Ron's photos and Mark's photos and my stuff and picking ones for the chapters. And oh my God, that was such a fun day. Because there's so many gorgeous photos.
Right.
Oh, so now, and Mark is working on the actual layout, and then it's ready to go to press. So I can't stress enough how great it would be if everyone just said, hey, look, we're going to get this book no matter. I'm going to get mine now, get a few little perks, photos from Mark's collection and stuff like that. And then we'll fulfill those orders first. I have been asked if it'll be on Amazon. At this time, I don't know. Right now, because the books can be signed by me, it'd be better to have them on the premise. So I'm gonna set up behind me here, and we're gonna get all the books printed and all the merchandise printed. I already have everything kind of basically ready to go. I just have to press a button. Cool. And I have recruited my nephews, my Jake and Lucas, 21 and 19. They're going to come on over, and we're going to crank up 80s music, and we're going to fulfill all the pre-order links as soon as we can. So it's going to be a fun thing. And that's basically it. So now we have the phase 2 going on, and trying to get the word out there and get the last bit of funding so we can just get this thing underway and get into production.
Yeah, good for you. This is an exciting book, and having that love that you had and that personal connection with it. That's what pushes you through all the work, right? I mean, that's a lot of work.
Labor of love, baby. Labor of love.
Total labor of love. Yeah, I really appreciate you hanging out with me today and talking about this great singer, Kevin Dubrow. He was so much a part of my childhood and my teenage years when I was watching these guys on stage and wanting to be the next guy on stage, just like he wanted to be that, Rod Stewart. And it's those moments, I think he said, and Frankie said, they actually had this in common that I saw. For people that are their age, the flashpoint for their inspiration was the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I believe that's what
interesting.
I think they both said that. And I know for sure Frankie said that, but when you're talking about 10 years older than you and me, that's about when the first big thing that happened in music on TV. So for us, it was MTV. It was these guys, right? For them, it was the Beatles. And then it went on and on. Unfortunately, that's kind of changed with so much, variety in the way you get things. It's just too many things to take in. But things like this too, where we could sit down and talk so remotely and talk about something like this. And with Ron's book and his, like I said, I knew about it, but until I watched the interviews and watched how everybody was just doting over how great the Randy Rhoads thing was, I was like, well, maybe I'll get it, but now I'm going to get it, Now I'm like, yeah, well, sounds like it's really good, and I really got to have it.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Actually, the person who did the layout of his book, Denny Anderson, he is going to be doing the final review of our book to make it print ready. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the people that I actually got on the original Dubrow Rocks mailing list by putting flyers out at the forum. That's how I met him. Wow. And I ended up marrying him in my 20s.
What?
Now we've been divorced for like 20 years, but we were very good friends.
Oh, okay.
But still, so Denny, who did the layout for Ron Sobol's book, he's worked on a lot of Randy stuff. So Denny's a big player in all this musical scene. He's definitely in the background, but he's got a lot of talent, and everybody goes to Denny when they need things like that done.
Yeah, well, I always say this about the music business. It's funny, the circle is actually very small when you get in, You know what I mean? I go to the NAMM show, and there's 100,000 people there, and that are just like us. They're fans, they're business people, they're everybody who's in the music business. And I'll walk through there, and I'll run into the one person or two people that I know. Even in 100,000 crowd, I'll see them. There they are. And then before I know it, I meet somebody like Mark through another person, and then I end up with you on this call.
I know. I have met everyone I've dealt with as far as doing interviews have been, first of all, so cool. And they ask really fun questions. And we're talking about one of my favorite subjects. So that also helps.
Sure.
But it's almost like I thought, okay, well, I'll do an interview and that'll be it. But it turns out that I'm keeping in touch with these people. I mean, these are my people. And so it's a very, I'm learning and actually expanding, especially I've been out of the industry for a long time. I mean, I went completely away from all that. I mean, I always was a fan,
right? Sure.
But I wasn't doing fan club stuff anymore. I really wasn't, doing any of going to those kind of shows for Quiet Riot anymore. A lot of it because of painful reasons. I can't watch Quiet Riot perform without Kevin. And Frankie knew that. Right. He knew that I just couldn't do it. And
sure.
Couldn't. I would just stand there bawling the whole time. So what's the point?
Right.
I got to leave my memories intact, and I think Frankie respected that, and that was his business, though. So he needed to move on and find a new love for it. And I supported him in that, and he knew.
Sure.
But because Frankie and I were tight too. So he was another person. Most of the other guys kind of came and went, so I didn't have a chance to really get to know very many of them.
Right. Yeah, Frankie was there the whole time, and he was a soldier through that whole thing with the cancer, and when we everybody heard about it, it was just crazy that it happened. But
right behind you on my thing, I've got one of his pieces of artwork called the Metal Mask.
Oh, really? What is it?
Yeah, it's his artwork. Okay. I think it's FrankieBenelliArt.com, I believe it is, and it's a rhythm art, like he plays and light off the sticks.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've seen those.
And he signed them, and I got this back in July. I wasn't even aware of it. All of a sudden, I realized Frankie has this cool art, and I picked one called Metal Mask, and I put it up on the wall, and I shared a photo of it on his Facebook page, and he put a little heart by it. So he knew I had it, and this is one of my inspirations with the book and everything. I've got Frankie's artwork right over my computer here at home, so it just does my heart good.
Right. Well, it takes sometimes it takes somebody like you, to really come out and have the passion to bring Kevin's story. And you're in this book, just to kind of reiterate to the folks that are watching, the book is it your letters or your memories or a combination of all your photos?
Yeah, basically it's exactly what the title says. It's Keep On Rolling, My Fan Club Years with Kevin Dubrow and Quiet Riot. And the reason why both names are on there is because he was Dubrow first, and then he didn't turn into Quiet Riot. I don't want to step on the toes of the Randy years when they actually had a different fan club president named Lori Holland, and she took care of their fan stuff then. I started with Kevin, and I went through the mental health first few albums. That's kind of when I was in part of the scene. And there's information and how my relationships, how they unfolded after I was no longer working with the band. So it's a combination. I try to put it in the best chronological, but chapters could be a paragraph, chapters could be 2 pages. And so it's really about me doing snapshots of different memories. If something stuck out, and it's a story I may have told my friends, or a happening, or something that Kevin and I had talked about, or anything of that nature, or something with Frankie, I would put it in the book. And it starts with Kevin's funeral, and there's Kevin's funeral reprise at the end. And while I wrote this book, besides all the different memories, and doing all the research and refreshing my memory and pulling out memorabilia and going through all that, I didn't realize it until the end of the book when I was writing it, that I actually had an epiphany about Kevin at the end of the writing of this book. And I won't tell you what it is, but the epiphany is very clear at the end. So it really was something that was very, it was probably helpful for me to do. It's just, for me, with Kevin's death, that I did this book. I thought I had no idea until the end. I went, wow, epiphany. And that was maybe the book was really meant for that, and everything after that is gravy. Anybody who wants to read it and enjoy the stories from a fan's perspective, and maybe working with the manager and goes on the road and all the different little levels from my perspective. And yes, some of Kevin's letters that he wrote to me are in there, and some of my memorabilia. And then, of course, Ron and Mark have the heavy hitter photos that, if they matched a chapter, I popped them in there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you talking to me today, and I hope this gets out there, and you're honoring the memory of one of the greats, or the great singers of all rock and roll. And
I love hearing that. I'm sure he does too.
Well, of course, you just got to remember that these people are rare. How rare is it to be one of the 7 guys at the US Festival? That's rare. That's millions.
It really is. And honestly, when I think about it too, when I have these interviews, I think of myself, Kevin had a million different relationships, and I'm sure a lot of them much closer in a lot of different ways. Frankie, girlfriends, people that have known him way longer than I have in my little window of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I am beyond honored that I decided to be the one to, put this information out on Kevin. Just like I did back then. I wanted to be with him, help with Dubrow, and here I am 40 years later being the spokesperson for him after. And it does my heart good. It can choke me up sometimes.
Yeah, I know. Well, sometimes things feel like they're meant to be. And, obviously this was meant to be for you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like any career that you love and something you love to do like this. It's almost like it was just given to you as a gift, and you're supposed to run with it.
Yes, I do believe Kevin's collaborating with Mark and I in heaven.
I agree.
He's collaborating.
I agree, and
he probably put us together and said, "Hey, check out Mark. You're gonna work great with him."
Yeah, these pictures are awesome, and this is good stuff. Yeah, he would love it. I know he would. So thank you very much. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And
yes, it was very enjoyable to speak with you. I had a great time. I forget sometimes we're even doing it. I'm just having a good time.
Well, you know what? I watched you, and I thought she's going to be easy to talk to. I just knew it. I could tell right away. This is going to be really easy to talk to. And so thank you for doing that. And I'll get this up here in a few days, and then I'll send you a link, and we'll get this thing going. And hopefully we can get you some more folks on the campaign and get this thing out there for everybody.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you anyone who's watching. I appreciate your support.
Thank you very much. Hit me up anytime you need something.
Okay,
all right?
I will.
Anytime, okay? Thank you.
Bye, Jeff.
Bye-bye.